All right, guys. So yeah, we're live on Instagram. Let me turn on Facebook and all right, team, we're recording. All right, guys, welcome back. Another live session with myself and the armchair guys, Jordan, Ryan. Today we're gonna hop into a topic that has been growing in popularity over the years, especially as arm injuries continue to rise. And a lot of people are starting to point the finger at fastballs as the reason for all these injuries that we're seeing. Um, but it might not be the bad guy that we're making it out to be. And we're going to dive deep into this with some of the misconceptions. And we're actually going to talk some of the evidence on what's really causing injuries and why fastballs might not be the thing that we believe they are. So Ryan, why don't you start us off? Like, let's talk about this building momentum against fastballs. And Ryan, I know you just made a post on LinkedIn, so I'll try to repost that and get it out there. But yeah, let's dive into this. Why is this gaining so much momentum? And and dive into that topic just a bit.
Yeah, it's very misunderstood. There's been a really good research article that has come out. It's actually older now. Two great surgeons who have been able to publish with is Dr. Pete Chalmers and Dr. Brandon Erickson. And they just did this like entire what is the prediction of at least Tommy John surgeries, ulnar collateral ligament reconstructions, which is this little guy here on the elbow that we're always talking about. And what they found is that on its own, fastball velocity only predicts the presence of ulnar collateral ligament reconstruction at less than 4%. Okay. And then they did a multilinear regression, which is taking a few factors to predict injury. And the added effect of body mass, I believe it was, and I believe the other one was height. But putting those three together, it only predicted injury at 7%. So that means that these injuries, are caused by other factors that, like, if it's just velocity, you're looking at 96% of something else is predicting these injuries. And, the biggest thing that we see in research is that it's fatigue. Fatigue has been shown to increase injury risk to the throwing arm by 36 times, which is huge. And, the way that we're approaching fastball velocities, I don't think is correct. There's other studies that they tried to show a connection between fastballs and injury. And what you found, if you actually looked at the samples, the guys, there was a bunch of players that threw the exact same velocity in each group. So you get the injured group and the non-injured group, and you have players that are throwing the exact same. And then when you look at the velocities, the averages in this previous study, it was done in 2010. This is what shows you where high school players are from. The present day high school Division I recruit is throwing harder than the major leaguers that were in that study. Okay. Like the average velocity was like 88.9 in one group. And I think it was like 87 or something in the other. So, the velocity thing, I'm not convinced of. It's the lack of monitoring and arm strength that I think is the big problem. I want to turn it over to Jordan because, people aren't really aware of fastball trends and usage and all the things that are happening now. And you can kind of talk about that, Jordan, because I don't know, are fastballs being used as much now?
No, I mean, even seeing this at the college and the high school level, kind of moving back into that more is, gosh, my first stint into college baseball, we were still throwing 65% fastballs. Now guys are throwing roughly 50% fastballs even at the college level, and then the major league level, you have some guys throwing 40%. But they keep lessening fastball usage year to year, increasing off speed usage. So it's obviously not a fastball problem. We're throwing less fastballs and we're using our off-speed pitch more. And then we're going to piggyback this into there. There's plenty of research, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Ryan, where people go over how the breaking ball actually puts less stress on the arm. The changeup puts less stress on the arm. So if we're throwing less fastballs, and research is suggesting that off-speed pitches are putting less stress on the arm, I don't think that it's a pitch usage issue. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean the common knowledge for people who are reading biomechanics research is that the changeup itself really offloads the arm. You're absorbing more. You can see that in the delivery with the lead knee. With changeups, you can see guys, they soften it, they flex it, so that energy transfer is actually a lot lower. You're trying to absorb, and you're using the changeup more, you're using other pitches more in today's game. The other thing that's like kind of puzzling to me, and Jordan, you could probably talk a little bit more about this, is like what's gone on with the pitching rotation, right? Like, okay, they're throwing less fastballs, and the fastballs have the highest torque. That's known. And sliders, those ones are pretty close. But you know, but are we, we're not even throwing as much, like 3 times through the order. We're not going to see guys that are, going to be throwing complete games. That's like unheard of now. It's almost considered criminal to have a guy pitch a full game. But what's been going on with the structure of the MLB season and also the pitching rotation? Are they just getting more rest? This is also makes this very puzzling.
So they are getting more time off between outings, because I remember, gosh, even my first year when we were with the Angels, I remember we're sitting there in a spring training meeting, and I won't use the name of the pitcher, but they go, if this guy's going well, we want him on a 4-day rotation. And he ended up staying pretty healthy, and he pitched pretty well, and he would throw sometimes on a 4-day, most of the time on a 5, but they were bouncing this guy back and forth when we were in, an actual postseason push for a little bit of time there. So guys were throwing on shorter rest. They were also, there's a lot that goes into it, because you also have to consider there was less when they were in the off season. They were doing more pitcher specific style training. So some of them were working jobs. Like I go back to my mentor, Tom House, who was always using this example of Nolan Ryan worked on a farm, and everything he did was like kinematic sequence training by throwing bales of hay. He was working shovels. So he was still training, but even while he was throwing, he wasn't throwing and competing 12 months a year. Where now I think we see a lot of these injuries are happening before guys even get into pro ball, because they're competing 12 months a year. And I think that we compete too much and we don't throw and train specifically enough. Oddly enough, we were actually talking about this right before we started this with our owner, Dugan, who's the founder of Crossover and Arm Care. But we were going over it, and he's like, these guys in these youth leagues will do nothing, 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 huge volume of competition, nothing for 6 days, huge volume of competition. Where I think what we saw before was guys were actually wave loading and undulating, in your words, and we're still undulating now, but we're not doing it as much in the off season. What are your thoughts on that? That's kind of what I see.
I mean, we had this discussion, of like, uh, what is going on in guys' off seasons. I mean, the thought of people saying, okay, well, these injuries are coming from athletes trying to chase velocity. And to me, there is
Real quick
some
on
truth
that.
in. What's that?
Real quick on that. Everyone's always tried to chase velocity. What was it? In 2016, they came out with that documentary called like Fastball.
Fastball.
It's like this isn't new, so I think that's just like a crutch. Sorry,
here,
go ahead.
yeah, but here you go. Like, so the thing is, and this is my opinion. It's the training for velocity that's unmonitored. That's the problem. Like, it could be that athletes are being put in this program. I know this happens all the time. We have athletes who are like, oh, dude, we study this athlete. We look at their throwing our metrics, and they're like, we got to talk to them. You got to stop your velo training. I got one right now that's like, doing pull downs with a 6-ounce ball and loses internal rotation strength, right? Like, you got to control a heavier ball when you're laying back. Of course, it's going to drive down your strength. And that's what I'm talking about. The velocity itself in MLB games, let's just say, I don't think it's very predictive, okay, of injury. And it's been shown. We've shown this in publication. But when it comes to the off-season training, that unmonitored programming where you can't really assess a player and say, hey, I got to pull back the reins, that's the problem. And when you look at the training, it's stepwise. It gets harder. You got more volume each week. Now, Jordan talked about undulations. That's a wave pattern. You got to have highs and lows even if they're deload components in the middle where the athletes are doing recovery throwing and recovery work, you still have to monitor, your workload strategies. You got to plan the recovery around the arm, and you can't have them fit into a plan. It's got to adjust. That's where I see the problem. They're going into spring training and they may have overtaxed their arm that has been underprepared. And then all of a sudden they get into spring training and they got, these everyday bullpens that the arm has no recovery from, right? We just know 72 hours you need to lessen your inflammatory state, getting closer to baseline. So there's all these factors, and not looking at the radar gun itself is the problem. It's unmanaged training, and you're right. Like, and there's also some BS out there that says that, Greg Maddux threw 71, as a fastball. He literally, his scouting reports and even talking to Tom House, he was in the mid 90s.
I know on the showcase in college baseball, they posted his scout report from high school. He was throwing 96 in high school.
I know. So the thing is that what he had learned is how to, control that velo boost. And then when he started seeing he's losing the velo, that's where his auxiliary pitches, really kind of supported him. So, I mean, it's just a wild time where, you got the pitch clock, you got the loss of sticky stuff, and now it's like everybody's chasing velocity. It's all of these factors that you have to understand. What is it doing to the arm? And if you're evaluating the arm, then we're making all these different elements less risky because we can manage the player.
Yeah. So on that real fast, we had Nick Cerrillo on the podcast just a little while ago. I think we've already posted that one. And he said something that piggybacks off of my belief that I've had for a very long time, is he said, with more velocity comes more responsibility. And most people just want to get the velocity without the responsibility. But it's just like anything, as you increase your capacity to do something that is, more stressful or whatever it may be, it comes with a higher responsibility on your end to ensure recovery, to increase your nutritional intake, to manage your shoulder. And what I had always learned, and again, I'll go back to my mentor, and I have it's not a shock, I have a very heavy NPA bias. No one's confused on that, obviously, but they always use the thing called foot pounds. And if you don't know what that is, go to their website, check it out. But they have, if you throw this velocity and X amount of pitches, you need to do this much work to put back into your system. So it's like, as you throw harder, guess what? You have to do more work to maintain your shoulder before you're allowed. And their whole thing was, this is before you touch the mound again. Mm-hmm. So if it's 10,000, well, you need to do 10,000 amount of work of whatever it is you want to do. Put it back into the shoulder because you took it out. And Nick Cerrillo was saying the same thing in different words. As you throw harder, you need to do better. Mm-hmm. If you throw slower, then don't be too worried about it because you're not really needing to take it serious anyways. But as you throw harder, it comes with more responsibility to make sure you're able to recover. If you want to be a performance, Ferrari or Maserati or run on the Indy 500, you got to maintain those cars every couple laps. If you're just driving a Honda Civic like I do, I can probably push that oil change a little bit. But if you want to be a race car, you have to really maintain that thing.
Yep. Matt, you had something, I thought.
Yeah, I want to ask a couple questions to you guys. And I want to bring it back to this topic of pitch selection, specifically fastballs. All right, so if you're just joining us, we kicked off this whole discussion making the point that it's not inherently fastballs that are causing arm injuries. It's the fatigue that's causing arm injuries. So bringing that back to fastballs, could we say that fastballs are more fatiguing than an off-speed pitch? So thereby, if you're throwing 75% of your pitches as fastballs, you're going to be more fatigued if 50% of your pitches are fastballs. So we'll start with that, and then I have a follow-up to go with that.
I mean, that's an interesting piece in the sense that I have done studies on changes in mechanics and what happens to internal expression of fatigue, functional forearm fatigue. But I kept the actual ratio. It was 3 fastballs to 1 changeup. They all threw the same pitches. So it would be interesting to go and just look at fastballs versus changeups, but they'd have to have more of an equal size, sample size. My belief is that you do need to have a certain level of exertion when you throw a changeup. It's almost could be more from your lower body per se. Although we know that the accelerations of the arm are slower, it takes a lot, to decelerate. We can always accelerate pretty easily, but think about it. You got to put the brakes on a little bit more. You have to have more control. But that is a great question. And that's something that I think could be answered by a lot of coaches in their bullpen work. Hey, I got my pitcher, he's throwing 30 pitches a day. I'm going to do 5 fastballs. I'm going to do a slider here. I'm going to do, and you can kind of look at how fatiguing the bullpens are, scaling them. With Jordan and I and some of our clients, we're just looking after their bullpens and assessing them. But because it can be scripted, this is something we could study. Again, it's a big fatigue problem. You're hitting the nail on the head, and there's all sorts of factors. Like, some people reduce the pitching delivery to a physics equation. We're talking like a free body diagram, like I have behind me. It's in 3D, and every pitch to pitch, every rep to rep is going to change. And imagine, oh boy, I'm starting the next day and we leave early in the morning to a game. We're going to have a show and go, and I'm going to have broken sleep. Well, now, even if I was in an optimal, like metabolic economy state where I'm not using a ton of energy, I now have lack of sleep. My nutrition could be off. I'm sleeping in a weird bed. I got kind of like my back stiff. All of these things come into play. But guess what? The arm is the window into the soul. It tells us the neurological state of the athlete. So when we start seeing lower force production, we have to make those adjustments regardless of the pitches. But that's really, interesting. People can see a lot of studies, and I read a ton of them. I have my eyes open to fatigue-driven studies that show changes in ligament properties, changes in strength, where they look on ultrasound. And people don't realize, like, between 40 and 60 pitches, you can lose a lot of strength. We do our pinch grip strength with our dynamometer, and you can get a lot more of the opening of the joint line. That means that the muscles aren't as strong, or even at relaxed states, to keep the elbow closed. So that puts tension on the UCL when it can open. But that's a huge discussion, and the other thing too is, how are we developing our youth pitchers? Think about it. This preconceived notion of the fear of the curveball. Well, what are they throwing more as a kid? They're learning to throw fastballs, and kids from the time that they're younger, they want to throw fast. So the whole coaching, we have to re-engineer this to say, hey, we need to develop an off-speed pitch. We need to develop the changeup so that we can underload the arm, so that we can scale the workload. It's like going to a gym, and every day I'm going to be trying to do a max bench, as a 9-year-old, because you're teaching them how to do the fastball, but we don't know how to like take it off and say, okay, let's do this at 30% and give you some rep work, but we're going to give you a different stimulus, and you're still going to work on throwing,
Yeah, fatigue is just so unique to an individual because, like, for instance, if we have Matt throw a 15 pitch bullpen Monday and a 15 pitch bullpen Friday, he may respond the exact same. He may respond completely different. And I think the important thing on that is we're not a video game character. We are not a creative player. What you ate on Sunday is going to impact how you respond on Monday. What you ate on Tuesday is going to impact how your body actually recovers from what you did on Monday, so you can be ready for Wednesday. So all these things factor in, and it's so much more than just pitch counts. And we think that pitch counts are the answer to a problem that has still not been solved. And now we have our dynamic pitch count adjustments, which my belief is it is a better solution because it's factoring in how you did recover. It's factoring in how you responded to your last outing. It's factoring into all your sleep information, everything we can collect. It's factoring it in there. So I have some guys that, one outing, it'll tell them 110, but then the next outing, it might tell them 55. So it's making sure that it's adjusting and being dynamic in that based on how they're neurologically bouncing back. based on how their arm is handling. Because every day is different. And I always use this example. I had an athlete through a 20 pitch sim game or a 20 pitch sim inning, took a break, 20 pitch sim inning. He lost 7% strength. A week later, he threw a 20 pitch sim inning, took a break, threw a 20 pitch sim inning. He lost like 23% strength. That's the same volume, the same workload in the same athlete on the same amount days rest. So it's obviously not pitch count. It's obviously not days rest. It's the way that his body handled that specific outing itself. We're unique. We're individual. We have to make sure we're prepping ourselves. The athletes that play the longest have the best preparation strategies. They are diligent in what it is they're doing. They're OCD about testing their arm strength. They're OCD about undulating their throwing programs based on arm strength, and they're paying attention to the nutrition. And we have stuff that goes into every single one of those aspects. I know I got long-winded there. Sorry, Matt. I think you were going to say something.
No, all good. I like the added nuance to all that, and I think that's the biggest thing to take in this whole discussion is there is so much nuance between players, even within players, that one outing to the next could be highly variable on how impactful that is to that player and their joints. But so let's take it back to that original question. Okay, is the fastball more stressful or more taxing to the arm than an off-speed pitch? I think the best answer to that is we don't really know, and the real answer is it's highly variable, as we just covered. But let's just go based on experience. Jordan, for you as a pitching coach, when now in the Arm Care app, we see every player has their individualized pitch count totals there on the app. Hey, this is how much you should be throwing today. Do you take into account pitch selection when you look at how many pitches a player is going to throw? So, for example, a player has a 30 pitch pin, they're going to throw majority of that as fastballs. Is that going to adjust your pitch count at all if they're working on something differently? So
so the younger, 100%. Yeah, the younger the athlete, they are going to throw more fastballs for me in that bullpen. So they're going to be focusing more on the ability to command that pitch per strike, because your ability to pitch, and this can go down a big, long, this is going to be a live stream for another day, but you have to be able to tunnel your pitches. You have to be able to have movement off that fastball plane. So if you can't control your fastball, that's great if you have the world's greatest breaking ball. If you want to pitch at a higher level, you need to throw them both out of the same tunnel. They need to throw 3 pitches out of the same tunnel, and then 4 pitches out of the same tunnel. So you have to be able to tunnel, and that all starts with that fastball foundation. Now, as we get into a higher level of play, so me and Ryan have some, professional relievers that we work with. When they haven't thrown in a couple days, it may be, hey, you're throwing a bullpen. I need you to throw 12 to 15 off the mound. 80% of that is going to be focused on your split finger, because that's the pitch you need to make sure that's what you make your money off, is that split finger. So you're going to work on a split or a slider or a curveball. And they may have that their practice sessions weighted more towards that off-speed pitch that signs their paycheck every month. But the younger the athlete, we need to focus on that fundamental development. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The one thing I want to, the crowd to understand who's listening here, you can do exactly what Jordan and I do in terms of scaling programming for athletes, monitoring them. We have courses. We have a great course on data-led velocity enhancement training. The biggest metrics to look at, like, start with, we're talking about what can they handle. Start with our strength velocity ratio. Really understand that with your athlete. It's one of the easiest ones, in my opinion, to improve, because that looks at the pounds of arm strength per miles per hour. Okay. So intuitively, if we're throwing harder and our strength is going down, they're in opposite directions. That means we're stretching the heck out of our tissues to create velo, to accelerate the throwing arm, and the force to absorb is going down. That's an indicator that says, okay, that athlete isn't right for this program right now. We have to fix that. Sometimes even we have some higher end players. We got to be very careful when they select, like I said, different kinds of weighted balls. We don't want the fatigue to set in where their strength is going down and their velo is going up and it's still blue. We're still over. It's a 1.6. So that's our key metric, is that the athlete has to have 60% more strength in pounds than miles per hour. So if I throw 100 miles per hour, I need at least 160 pounds of strength. Okay. So we have some athletes that might be in the twos because they're super strong. But when it starts seeing, okay, this is going down to, 1.9, 1.8, 1.7, we know there's a strength loss. Okay. Even though it's okay. So we make some guided decisions, learn how to appreciate that value. It might tie in to what Matt's saying. The stronger you are, like, you don't ever want to, outthrow your strength. So the stronger you are, the less taxing pitching can be. It takes on average, when you release a ball, a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, it's about your body weight that you're requiring, in securing the shoulder joint. But imagine that strength. Maybe you just have 225 pounds of strength. That's what you weigh. Imagine your strength goes up to 300. Well, now on that fastball, it's probably going to go up your fastball velocity, but now you got a lot more strength reserve, to handle it. And you're not taxing your system like it's a max effort thing every time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where strength comes in. You develop capacity, and overall, you have more of an efficient, fatigue resistant delivery, in my opinion.
Yeah, just one more thing on that too is if you want to perform at a high level, if me and Ryan both throw 96 miles an hour, neither one of us does, but we're using this for the scenario. We both throw 100 pitches every outing. We're both on a 7-day rotation to make it more applicable to a youth standard. This is going to be even more applicable if you're in college or pro ball. And after the games, I'm eating a half cheese pizza and a 6-pack of Coke, and Ryan's eating organic chicken with Greek yogurt and, purified water with, Celtic sea salt. And I'm hydrating with freaking Gatorade and sports drinks. We're both throwing the same. We'll say we both have the same mechanical efficiencies. I'm eating highly inflammatory foods. Ryan's eating very non-inflammatory foods. Which one of us do you think is going to recover faster with the same training? Mm-hmm. Ryan's going to recover faster. Which one of us is going to stay healthy over the mid to long term? Ryan's going to stay healthy. So we keep looking at these things that don't matter. And for people that don't know what I'm talking about, we have our MLB recovery habits course. And I know we weren't planning on going this direction, but this is what's going to help you maximize your actual training, your actual recovery. Because these kids play in a travel tournament and then they go to KFC after. Mm-hmm. And trust me, KFC can do one heck of a job for their catering services. I love KFC just as much as the next guy, but it's not going to help you get to the big leagues at the end of the day. It's not going to help you stay healthy. You need to get a crock pot. You need to go make your own food. You need to take the extra 20 minutes a day to prep yourself to actually get the gains and the recovery off your customized arm care training. And we weren't going this way. I know, Matt, I'm sorry. I'm getting off topic. But if somebody wants, just for whatever it is, if you're listening on the live stream, if you want to get the MLB recovery habits course, email me. It's just jordan@armcare.com and I will do it for 50% off. I will give you 50% off on the MLB recovery habits course because that's how important I actually think it is. You can do all the strength work you want. It's going to set the foundation. But if you want to recover and you actually want to get better than the guys you're competing against, you have to out nutrition them. You have to out sleep them. You have to out blue light blocker them. You have to out, prep. You have to do everything better when it comes down to it. If you want it, email me, jordan@armcare.com. We will do it for 50% off. We need you set up on it when it comes down to it. So I know that wasn't the original plan. I'm talking about fastball velocity, but if you want to throw hard, you have to recover. That's just the bottom line.
It's a part of it. The opening quote that we had from Nick Serio is with, maximum velocity enhancement comes maximum responsibility. I'm paraphrasing it. And I do think that falls in line because you got to do the little things well. And again, we're talking arm fatigue is really the indicator, and you got to do the things to prevent it, and you got to do it on and off the field.
All right. It was a great discussion, guys. Thank you. We've ran out of time. Jordan had to get in his pitch there for Celtic sea salt. He's clearly in the pockets of Big Celtic, getting that kickback. But so, guys, just to wrap it up, just to wrap it up, there's not enough evidence there to say fastballs are increasing risk of injury, but there is the evidence to show that pitching while fatigued is the greatest risk for injury. And rather than pointing the finger at, oh, it must be fastballs, we got to start pointing the finger at inefficient recovery, poor recovery habits, poor training habits, um, too much competition, not enough training. What are you doing for your arm care? All of these factors play much bigger impact on a player's risk for injury than, oh, this guy threw 30 more fastballs today than the next guy. There's just not the evidence to show that that is going to be the underlying thing that breaks the camel's back. So take that for what you will. And the beauty of it is, with the Arm Care app, you can actually train this, or you can actually monitor this. So if you believe that the fastball is the underlying issue, do some studies. Do a pin, throw all fastballs, and look at your fatigue number. How did that change versus a pin with a different pitch selection? Okay, you will know your exact metrics on how you respond to certain training and certain competition based on how did that strength change acutely. So we'll wrap it up there. We'll see you next week for our next live discussion. Until then, have a great week.